What difference if I hail from north or south, or from the east or west? My heart is filled with love for all of these. I only know I swell with pride, and deep within my breast I thrill to see all glory paint the breeze. Oh, this is my country, land of my birth. This is my country, grandest on earth. I pledge in my allegiance, America the bold, for this is my country to have and to hold. This is my country, land of my birth. This is my country, grandest on earth. I pledge to my allegiance, America the bold, for this is my country to have and to hold.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the City of Moreno Valley's Memorial Day Remembrance Ceremony, and thank you all for being here today. I'm Dr. Extian Gutierrez, Mayor of Moreno Valley, and I'm honored to preside over today's event. This is a time of exceptional importance as we gather together to honor the sacrifices made by our servicemen and women and their families to ensure that we have the freedoms that we have today. We have a full program for you today, and I'm proud to see so many patriots in our community come together for this purpose. I would like to extend a special thank you to the Moreno Valley Master Chorale for setting the tone for today's musical flair. Let's give them a round of applause. As we begin our program this afternoon, please stand as I invite Frank Wright, a strong community advocate and a Navy veteran, to the podium to lead us in the invocation.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real honor to be here to represent this glorious day. So we'd like to ask you to have a moment of prayer and recognition of this fine hour. Shall we bow our heads in prayer? Our Heavenly Father, we stand before you here today at this very hour in memory for all those brave soldiers who have given their ultimate sacrifice in the laying down of their lives for our country, that we may bestow to them the greatest honor of distinction and recognition of their gallantry, of patriotism, and dedication they so willingly gave. We ask now, O Lord, that you will continue in your protection of our fighting men, airmen, sailors, Army, and Marine Corps, that they will return home safely in their devotion of protection, the colors of the American flag. And Lord, for the presentation to all the veterans today throughout our nation who stand in reflection and pride of the 2 million men and women in uniform who have fought for the defense, security, and liberty since the birth and foundation, the 240 years of America, that this nation will highly resolve for the liberty it stands for. We thank you, Father, in the name of our Lord, Jesus. Amen.
Thank you so much, Frank. Please remain standing for the presentation of colors by the Blue Eagles Total Force Honor Guard, followed by the national anthem performed by Valley View High School vocalist Yin Sid Anderson, and the Pledge of Allegiance by Mayor Pro Tem Victoria Baca.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you.
What a beautiful presentation and a lovely, lovely song that always brings joy and honor to our great nation. As many of you know, I come from a military family. My grandfather, Antonio Baca, is a World War I veteran. My father and his brother, Juan Baca, are World War II veterans, and my brothers are Vietnam veterans. So we come from a very patriotic family, and I'm just honored to have everybody here to memorialize everyone that has fought for our nation, who has given their lives, and we are here to honor them. So please place your hand over your heart and pledge allegiance to this wonderful, wonderful, strong, #1 nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
At this time, I would like to introduce a special young lady that goes to our schools in Moreno Valley Unified School District. Her name is Miss Morgan Lowry. She is a high-achieving 8th grader at Vista Heights Middle School. Miss Morgan is academically strong, earning straight A's. She is an athlete who also enjoys softball and has a remarkable servant's heart, as she volunteers with an agency that trains service dogs for veterans and is very involved in her church youth group. Miss Morgan just returned from the 8th grade East Coast trip, where she and her classmates visited 18 memorials, 6 historic cemeteries, the U.S. Capitol, the White House, the Supreme Court, the National Archives, and so much more. She has agreed this afternoon to share her thoughts about service and sacrifice. So let's go ahead and give a round of applause to Miss Morgan Lowry.
Hello everyone, my name is Morgan Lowry. First off, I would like to thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and special guests for inviting me to speak here today. So, a little bit about me that you've already heard from the mayor. I am 14 years old and I attend Vista Heights Middle School. In my free time, I play softball and do volunteer work for service dogs for veterans. This speech is important to me because I have family members that have served and are serving in the military. My father is in the Air Force. He's been serving at March Air Force Base for about 15 years. My grandfather served in Vietnam, and my great-grandfather served as a medic in the Korean War. Let me tell you about my trip. Just recently, we came back from a trip to the East Coast. We began our East Coast tour on Armed Forces Day, May 20th, a day set aside by President Truman to honor all those who are currently serving. We left Vista Heights and visited March Air Force Base, standing under an F-4 fighter jet and listening to Colonel Gretchen Wilst tell us about what true service is. Our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor. This was the theme of our trip. During the trip, we were accompanied by a Vietnam veteran. He explained to us how many soldiers and veterans have sacrificed so much to fight for our country. I think we take our veterans for granted. Without them, we wouldn't be safe, our country wouldn't be safe, and our country wouldn't be what it is today. In November, we'll all celebrate Veterans Day, honoring all who have served in the military. But today, Memorial Day, we solemnly remember all who have given the ultimate sacrifice for their country. I was also given the huge honor to place a wreath at the tomb of the soldier who has the highest rank in American history according to the congressional law, General George Washington. Here's a little quote I picked to share with you. Some of you might have heard this before, but for those of you who haven't, it is relevant to my speech. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. John 15:13. We probably couldn't do that, right? But those soldiers could. Soldiers serving now can. They have courage and a greater love than any of us have. If they didn't love their country and if they didn't care for any of us, they wouldn't do their job. They wouldn't go out and risk their lives for each and every one of us. There are other places in the world where danger and war is a common thing. Wars rage through countries every day. Those other countries don't have the freedom that we have. They don't have the same safety we have. We should be grateful for having a safe nation. We should be more grateful for what we have. We owe our veterans our admiration and respect because of what they do for us. So this Memorial Day, or any other day for that matter, if you see a veteran, thank them for their service. Thank them for what they do for you personally. I also have one more quote for you before I come to a close. My great-grandfather, who was a Korean War veteran and a preacher of the gospel, shared this quote with our family. He said, to make a good speech, you need to be three things. Be clear, be brief, and be seated. And that's what I'm going to do. Thank you.
Wow, Morgan, great job. Let's give her another round of applause. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us today, this afternoon.
For unsung heroes, those who lay their dreams aside, choosing honor more than glory, pledging faith with quiet pride. Those whose uniform is courage and are unashamed of tears, fighting in their
going to finish up with Salute to the Armed Forces. Please stand as your service is sung. Your service song is sung. I'll say that 10 times. Okay, here we go.
Over hill, over dale, we will hit the dusty trail, and those caissons go rolling along. In and out, hear them shout, counter marching all about, and those caissons go rolling along. For it's high, high he in the field artillery. Count out your numbers loud and strong. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And wherever you go, you will always know that those caissons go rolling along. Anchors away, my boys, anchors away. Farewell to college joys, we sail at break of day, 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 day. Through Alaska and ashore, hail to the foe. Until we meet once more, here's wishing you a happy voyage home. We're always ready for the call. We place our trust in thee. Through holly gale and shot and shell, to win our victory. Semper Paratus is our guide, our pledge, our motto too. We're always ready to or die. High Coast Guard, we fight for you. Off we go into the wild blue yonder, climbing high into the sun. Here they come, zooming to meet our thunder, and the boys give her the gun. Down we dive, spotting our flame from under, off with one terrible roar. We live in fame, or we're down in flame, for nothing can stop the U.S. Air Force. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we will fight our country's battles in the air and land and sea. First we fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honor clean. We are proud to claim the title of United States Marines.
This afternoon is very special, not only for remembering our fallen heroes, but also we are incredibly honored to hear from our featured speaker, Major General Randall Ogden. General Ogden recently took command of the 4th Air Force headquartered at March Air Reserve Base. The 4th Air Force remains ready to support national security requirements across a full spectrum of operations from war to contingency situations. General Ogden leads the leadership and management of 11 flying wings, 1 flying group, and 2 regional support groups who provide strategic airlift, airdrop, aeromedical, air refueling, and associated support activities. His responsibilities include the readiness of 300 units and more than 24,000 personnel. The new commander comes from the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., where he served as Deputy Director for Global Policy and Partnerships on the Joint Staff. He is a command pilot with more than 4,500 combined flying hours. His career in the United States Air Force began about 3 decades ago and has filled senior leadership and command positions in Indiana, Kyrgyzstan, North Carolina, Southwest Asia, Illinois, and of course, Washington, D.C. It is truly my pleasure and honor to introduce Major General Randall Ogden. Let's give him a round of applause.
Mayor Gutierrez, thank you so much for that warm welcome. Thank you for being involved in this ceremony and all the support that the City of Moreno Valley gives us. And again, thank you to the fellow civic leaders here, citizens of Moreno Valley. Thank you for coming out. And also like to thank, I see our veterans out in the audience. And last, I'll thank my old friend and his wife Angela and Rusty General Muncie. Again, thank you for being out here today. But again, it is absolutely my privilege to be new to this community, new to the Moreno Valley area. It's been a warm welcome. Just the things this community does for Memorial Day is fantastic. And the broader community, my wife and daughter and I enjoyed putting flags out at one of the local ceremonies and driving through the Riverside National Cemetery, which is just absolutely a beautiful, beautiful cemetery. So again, we are delighted to be here. Morgan, what a nice job. I don't think there's anything I have to add to that. That was just absolutely fantastic. So. And I think we have at least one of the same quotes in our speech here, but that was tremendous. And this whole event has been tremendous. The choral, fantastic. The invocation, absolutely loved it. The national anthem, thank you. Just an absolutely beautiful, beautiful ceremony. Make sure this won't blow away here, but again, thank you for taking the time to honor the men and women that have gone before us and given of their lives. Again, buried in cemeteries throughout the United States, like again the beautiful one here at Riverside, a few miles from here. Our warriors buried overseas. Again, we just choose to remember that again that they made that ultimate sacrifice again that Morgan talked about earlier. And from the beginnings of our American Revolution, through the great strife of our Civil War, through World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and through today's fight against terrorism, men and women have given of their lives to defend our way of life, a way of life that values freedom and fights oppression throughout the world. And I've traveled the world considerably, and again, with every year and every visit to another country, I realize just what we have and what we need to appreciate. Our values of freedom and democracy and respect for human life. In a country, despite its flaws, that President Reagan called a city on a hill, a city that other countries can use as an example and strive to be. A nation Abraham Lincoln said in his Gettysburg Address that was conceived in liberty. The men and women we honor today took an oath to defend that liberty laid out in our remarkable Constitution. They raised their right hands and committed to defending our country with their lives. We remember as we gather today to honor their memory, but also, as Abraham Lincoln stated, to take an increased measure of devotion, that we're motivated by their sacrifice to be even motivated to a cause that they gave their last breath to. You know, again, as Morgan said, the Bible says that greater love is no man than to lay down their life. So I'd like to go through a few examples of stories of service members who made the ultimate sacrifice that have touched my life. Lieutenant Robert Kelly enlisted in the Marine Corps out of high school and served honorably for a number of years before he got his college degree and got his commission and joined the Marine Corps again as a second lieutenant. While he was in college, he married his sweetheart, and they planned a long career in the military. Unfortunately, while on patrol in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, he was killed by a roadside bomb. And that story is repeated, so that there's loss felt by many, many fathers, mothers, brothers, and sisters. But I hadn't heard of Lieutenant Kelly's story until I was on a tour of the Middle East with the Marine General John Kelly, now the Secretary of Homeland Defense. General Kelly is a much decorated veteran of the wars in Southwest Asia and is one of the most senior officers ever to lose a child in combat. It was inspiring to see General Kelly wear a t-shirt honoring his son while we traveled throughout and hiked through some of the Saudi Arabian peninsula. Again, in an inspiring way that where you see that, again, the price of freedom is not free. You can see it in General Kelly's eyes. But again, he was proud of his son, and he's proud of how he served his country. And General Kelly wrote shortly after his son's death, thanking everyone for their prayers and kindness. He also wrote of the unimaginable pain and how his family could not get through this without the help of friends and family and community events like this that communicate to parents who've lost a loved one that it was not in vain, that their sacrifice was truly valued. Another example comes from when my wife and I were stationed in D.C. We lived very close to the Pentagon and very close to Arlington Cemetery. And we'd walk through Arlington Cemetery past row after row of servicemen that had given their lives for their country. And then we'd stop at the tomb of the unknown soldier. And on the tomb reads the inscription, "Here rests in honor glory, an American soldier known only to God." You know, this tomb was built after World War I and contains the remains of unidentified service members from World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. But due to scientific advances in DNA, there probably will be no more unknown soldiers added to that too. As it turns out, a young Air Force Academy graduate, First Lieutenant Michael Blassie, was the unknown from the Vietnam era. He was flying a special operations missions in support of an Army unit under attack when his A-37 Dragonfly plane was hit by enemy fire and crashed into the jungles of Vietnam. Unfortunately, the helicopter sent to recover him, or possibly his remains, came under heavy enemy fire and could not land and pick him up. Lieutenant Blassie's family thought for years that Michael's remains would never be found. But thanks to DNA testing, it was discovered that their son, their brother, was again, his remains were inside the tomb. And Colonel Blassie, actually someone that I've worked with in the past, is an Air Force Reserve colonel at our headquarters. She was able to, with her family, go to the tomb and take their loved one out and bury him, Lieutenant Blassie, in his hometown. And finally, I would like to remember the life of one of the Inland Empire's very own, in Master Sergeant Buford Bud Johnson. And although I was not fortunate to meet Sergeant Johnson, his memory and legacy lives on. As one of the original renowned Tuskegee Airmen, he served his country well in World War II and for over 20 years in the United States Air Force. Known as a person with a tremendous ability to fix aircraft, he contributed greatly to the incredible success of the Tuskegee Airmen, and then went on to be one of the first jet engine mechanics in the Air Force. When speaking of the Tuskegee Airmen, he would say, they weren't good, they weren't very good, they were the best. And that's the approach he took not only to his Air Force career, but to life. And I find even more impressive than his skill as an airman was how he lived his life and he dealt with difficulty, especially racism. Because again, we have a great country, but we have our flaws, and we continue to work on them, we continue to get better. And Bud Johnson was one of those gentlemen that made our country better. And long after Bud retired, he'd volunteer his time and tell the great story of the Tuskegee Airmen. And he said that the Tuskegee Airmen followed 6 principles: aim high, believe in yourself, use your brain, be ready to go, never quit, and expect to win. And that's how the Tuskegee Airmen succeeded in a very difficult environment, a segregated military. And not only did he tell the great story of the Tuskegee Airmen, but he would also share how he dealt with racism. He described what it was like to be refused a place to stay or a meal just because of the color of his skin. His wisdom is something we can all benefit from. When someone treats you badly, Bud would say to use kindness. And when someone upsets you, consider the source. He would also say, and this is one of my favorite quotes of his, you can carry a heavy load or a light load. I don't have to tell you which load gets you farther. But he was a great American, and this community will miss him. Finally, I'd like to quote the Apostle Paul as he neared the end of his life. He could say with confidence that he had fought the good fight, that he had finished the race, and that he had kept the faith. And with great thankfulness and appreciation, we can say the same about our friends, family, and fellow service members who gave their last breath in devotion to our great country. We can too say with confidence they fought the good fight, defending our nation. They finished the race, a race that was far too short, like young men like Lieutenant Blassie and Lieutenant Kelly, and a race that was long and distinguished in the case of Master Sergeant Buford Johnson. But in all cases, the service members who have gone before us kept the faith with their families, their fellow service members, and a very grateful nation. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, General Ogden, for those kind words and for sharing those personal stories of the sacrifices of those heroes. At this time, I'd like to point out that to help recognize the sacrifice of service, the City Council established the Military Appreciation Banner and Paver Program. This program is important to the community, as Moreno Valley is deeply grateful for the sacrifices made by the United States military and their families. Today, I would like to recognize the following armed services personnel who have had a new banner or paver installed in their name. If your name is called, would you please stand so we can recognize you? If you are the mother or father, sister or brother of a banner or paver recipient who could not be here, please stand as well and remain standing in their honor. The first individual we have is Fabricio A. Ianisoto, serving in the U.S. Army. We also have Cedric Provost Jr., serving in the U.S. Army. Josue Emilio Kiboloy Lumba, serving in the U.S. Navy. Eric Thomas Wallace, serving in the U.S. Air Force. Thank you so much, and let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. Like the General mentioned, the cost of freedom is felt in the deepest among families and friends of those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. At this time, I would like to recognize and remember our fallen heroes from Moreno Valley who are remembered with banners surrounding this memorial. We have Michael A. Dahl, Jr., U.S. Army, Michael P. Damon, U.S. Army, Clayton G. Dunn II, U.S. Army, Reese Klasno, U.S. Army National Guard, Edwin Cutts, U.S. Army, Adrian L. Mitchell, U.S. Army,
William Dean Richardson, U.S. Army, Omar G. Roebuck, U.S. Marines, Anthony R. Servine, U.S. Marine, Jason Andrew Tetrault, U.S. Marines, Marcus Allen Tynes, U.S. Army. If any of the families of these fallen heroes are here today, we respectfully ask that you stand
as we honor your family who continues to pay the ultimate sacrifice through the loss of a loved one. I also would like to ask for all of us to please stand and give a moment of silence for the fallen heroes of Moreno Valley. Thank you. Now, with our respect and gratitude, we would like to recognize the U.S. military veterans and active duty servicemen and women that are here with us this afternoon. If you could please stand to be recognized. Any veteran or U.S. military active duty? Thank you for your service to our country. At this time, I'd like to invite the Knights of Columbus, AF Shalbana Assembly, to post the memorial wreath and ask you to remember those who have lost their lives in service to our grateful nation. Thank you. Please be seated. This concludes the City of Moreno Valley's 2017 Memorial Day ceremony. I would like to thank the Moreno Valley Master Chorale and Miss Anderson for performing for us today, as well as the Blue Eagles Total Force Honor Guard, Knights of Columbus, the inspiring Morgan Lowry, and thank you so much for your contribution to today's ceremony, to you all. Thank you. A special thanks goes to General Ogden on behalf of the council. We appreciate that you made the time in your busy schedule to join us as the keynote speaker on such a memorable occasion. Thank you. I would also like to thank the Fire Explorers, Soroptimist International of Moreno Valley, and Chamber of Commerce Military Affairs Committee for volunteering today to help make an event like this possible. Let's give them a round of applause as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to join us at the reception next door at the Conference and Recreation Center. Come and enjoy refreshments, a time of fellowship, and take a look at the artwork on display from our students in the Moreno Valley Unified School District who are inspired by their love of country. Once more, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Please stay and enjoy the reception. Thank you.